He thought the house was empty. He thought his life couldn't surprise him anymore. Then steam curled out of his bathroom, and a stranger's voice changed everything. If you love emotionally charged stories with shocking twists, hidden pasts, and second chances that hit hard, subscribe now. These are the stories everyone in the US and UK is binging, and you won't want to miss what happens next. When Daniel Carter pushed open the front door after a 14-hour shift at the warehouse, the first thing he noticed wasn't the silence he'd grown used to since becoming a single father, but the sound of running water echoing down the hallway like a heartbeat that didn't belong in his house. For a moment he thought exhaustion had finally tipped him into hallucination, the kind born from too many nights spent worrying about bills, about his 8-year-old son knows asthma, about whether he was failing at the one job that mattered most. Then he smelled it, soap, expensive and unfamiliar, cutting through the stale scent of reheated pasta and laundry detergent, and his blood went cold. Daniel set his keys down slowly, every instinct screaming danger, images flashing through his mind of break-ins he'd seen on the news, of Noah home alone for an hour before his neighbor picked him up from school, of all the ways a quiet life could shatter in seconds. He moved down the hall with the careful steps of someone who'd learned how to be afraid quietly, past Noah's room with its dinosaur posters and neatly folded blankets, until he reached the bathroom door, slightly ajar, steam spilling out like breath. And then he heard her voice, soft, startled, apologetic all at once, saying his name as if she'd practiced it, as if she belonged there. The woman who stepped back from behind the shower curtain was not what he expected. She wasn't frantic or threatening, but calm in a way that felt almost unreal, her eyes holding a recognition that made Daniel feel suddenly exposed, like she could see every scar he carried from a life that had gone wrong in quiet ways. She wrapped a towel around herself with the ease of someone who knew the space, who knew where he kept the clean ones, and before he could ask the 100 questions crashing through his head, she said, "I'm sorry. I didn't know how else to wait for you." The explanation that followed came in fragments. Her name was Claire, she said, and she'd been trying to find him for weeks, that the landlord had let her in thinking she was family, that there had been an emergency, something about a letter that never arrived, something about Noah's mother, Emma, a name Daniel hadn't heard spoken aloud in years without feeling the old ache reopen. He wanted to throw her out, to protect the fragile order he'd built from grief and routine, but when she mentioned Emma's handwriting, the way she described it looping too far on certain letters, he felt the ground shift beneath him. Claire told him she had been Emma's closest friend, the one who knew things even Daniel hadn't, and that she was there because Emma had asked her to come if anything ever went wrong. The words hung heavy between them, and Daniel felt anger flare. Emma had left, vanished into silence that ended with a phone call from a hospital 2 states away, and now a stranger stood in his bathroom claiming to carry her final intentions. Yet when Noah burst through the front door moments later, laughing and breathless from running, and froze at the sight of Claire, something unexpected happened. His face softened into recognition too. He said her name like a memory surfacing, like a piece of himself he hadn't known was missing, and in that instant Daniel realized this wasn't a random intrusion, it was a collision with a past he'd never fully understood. That night, stretched long and uneasy, with Claire explaining in low, careful tones how Emma had planned to come back, how fear and illness had twisted her decisions, how letters meant to explain everything had been intercepted by the wrong hands, and how Claire had carried the weight of that secret for years. Daniel listened, torn between disbelief and a hope he hated himself for feeling, while Noah slept on the couch between them, one small hand curled instinctively toward Claire as if anchoring her there. By the time dawn crept through the blinds, Daniel knew one thing for certain: the stranger in his shower had brought more than chaos, she'd brought a truth that could either heal them all or break what little they had left. The days that followed were nothing like Daniel expected, because instead of leaving once the story was told, Claire stayed, not out of convenience but out of a quiet sense of responsibility that slowly revealed itself in the way she cooked breakfast without being asked, in how she learned Noah's inhaler's schedule by heart, in how she respected the boundaries Daniel didn't know how to explain but desperately needed. As pieces of Emma's past came together, Daniel discovered that his anger had been aimed at a ghost shaped by half-truths, that the woman he'd loved had been fighting battles she'd hidden to protect him, and that Claire had been the keeper of promises never meant to hurt anyone. The real twist came when Daniel learned why Claire had showered that night. Not comfort, not intrusion, but fear, because someone else was looking for those missing letters, someone who had benefited from Emma's silence and now wanted to make sure the truth stayed buried. Tension crept into the house like a storm cloud, with late-night knocks, unanswered phone calls, and Daniel forced to confront the fact that being a good father sometimes meant stepping into danger instead of away from it. Through it all, an unexpected bond formed between Daniel and Claire. Not rushed or dramatic, but forged in shared worry, shared laughter over burnt toast, shared moments watching Noah sleep peacefully for the first time in months. When the confrontation finally came, it wasn't violence that resolved it, but exposure, documents brought into the light, lies unraveling under scrutiny, and Emma's voice finally heard through the words she'd written years ago, apologizing, loving, hoping. In the aftermath, with the threat gone and the past laid bare, Daniel faced a choice he never thought he'd have: cling to the safety of loneliness, or risk opening his home, and his heart, to someone who had already proven she belonged there in ways he couldn't deny. The final scene wasn't grand, but it was powerful. Daniel coming home from work again, tired but lighter, finding the bathroom door open, steam drifting out, not as a shock this time but as a symbol of trust, of life continuing, of a family reshaped rather than replaced. And as Claire stepped out, fully clothed now, smiling with the certainty of someone who had found where she was meant to be, Daniel understood that the night a stranger showered in his bathroom was the night his story truly changed, not because of scandal, but because of truth, forgiveness, and the courage to begin again.